Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the Nittany Lion Sports Report. It is live here on Bob Long Sports, housed on the Sports Stream Premium Network run by our buddy Bruce Badgley. Appreciate him being our home for the Nittany Lion Sports Report this year. My co-host, Tyler Gehlhaus. We come to you to talk about another loss against a top 10 foe in a game where Penn State had an opportunity to win the game. And Tyler, as we reflect on this game against Michigan, the regular season is nearing its conclusion here, just 2 games remaining. What's left? Nittany Lions, 6-4, 3 games lost against top 10 teams where you had a chance in every one of them. And then the game that the black mark will never escape this program and this coaching staff, fortunately or unfortunately, the loss against Illinois. So why don't you tell us where you are after what you saw on Saturday?
Well, right now I'm in my basement. Yeah, but yeah, it's just, it's frustrating because last year Penn State started 0-5 and won the last 4, 4-5, got some key guys back. Almost every key player that was, borderline staying going when it came down to the draft. And, really had some nice momentum. Started the season off with a nice win. Didn't look great, but you look at it now, Wisconsin's ranked 15, and Penn State went to their house in week 1, got the win. Like I said, it wasn't pretty. We're like, all right, that's a good way to come back from last year. Take care of business, Ball State. Then you beat Auburn at home. 3-0 led to 4-0 to 5-0. And then it's like that Iowa game totally screwed up this team, and they just haven't been able to bounce back. And you could argue that ever since then, the best that they looked was probably against Ohio State. Even though that game ended in a loss, I thought they played really well against Ohio State. Played well against Maryland, but that was a pretty close game until the pick 6 at the end to seal the deal. And then Saturday was equally as frustrating because at least in the first quarter, it felt like Penn State should have had at least a double-digit lead. They had, I think, 13 minutes possession compared to 2. Michigan didn't even get a first down. Penn State had good total yardage and only had 3 points to show for it. And right then and there, I kind of knew that it was going to be a tough one to pull off because of that. And lo and behold, Penn State wasn't able to hold on to a lead late in the game and ended up losing to 6th-ranked Michigan.
We can talk about that call on 4th down. They run the fake punt. Continue to drive.
Liked it. I mean, it was the first drive of the game. Yeah, I did like the fake punt.
Okay.
Now,
fair enough.
Here's the funny thing about the fake punt. Michigan called a timeout on defense. And Penn State wasn't set to run the fake at first. And then after the timeout, they go out and say, all right, we're going to run the fake. But Michigan didn't even really look like they were ready to defend the fake. So it worked out in Penn State's favor. Unfortunately, it only led to 3 points. 3 is better than 0 in that situation. So, 7 would have been ideal. But really the next possession was the frustrating one for me, was the fake field goal at the 2-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3-0 first quarter still. You're moving the ball pretty well. Running the ball, not so great. It's been a story all year. But I don't understand going for a fake field goal. And it wasn't run to perfection. It was a bad, toss, pass, whatever you want to call it, the Jordan Stout from the holder. But I think in that situation, one, you either take the points, make it 6-0, or if you're going to go for it, go for it. And because I think you have a better chance of scoring a touchdown with your offense than you do with your special teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get that. I don't love the call because you have all these playmakers and you throw it to Jordan Stout. Even if you ran Philly, Tyler Warren throws it to Clifford. We saw that in the first overtime against Illinois. I get it. That's quirky. But that's quirky in a way that's getting your playmakers involved.
Yeah, I don't understand taking the ball out. Look, if you want to kick it in that situation that early in the game, I'm okay with it. 6-0. I mean, but to show nothing, after that, you get nothing out of it. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what play I would have run on offense. They have no confidence in the run game, the O-line, and that's understandable. But it didn't make sense. And they had a really good opportunity in this game to jump on Michigan big early, and they didn't. And that is one of the reasons they lost the game.
What's very interesting, and I'm not sure if it was brought up by the broadcast team, but when you run a fake field goal like that in the NFL versus college, so in college, in theory, right, there's some exception for the down by contact rule.
Right, with the
When
holder's
you're
knee.
holding, because the knee
Right.
has to be down because you hold it and then the guy kicks it. But in this particular situation, it does look like he raised his calf above field level, which I guess was practice. But what an odd wrinkle and part of a trick play like that, frankly, that shouldn't be run anyway. But to have to get that ball snapped and as the holder that's throwing it, raise your calf up off the ground and deliver that ball. I don't really know. Not sure we need to talk in depth about that, but just something I thought about watching that, and just the unique nature of not needing to be down by contact, but just down when your knee touches. So
Right.
once that is designed as a fake, once that kicker vacates the area of the 3 steps and address the football with your right foot, um, if the holder has the knee on the ground, when is he technically down? Is it as soon as Jordan Stout breaks? Is it outside of some sort of tackle box, quote
Yeah,
unquote?
that's a good question. I don't know because I've always thought about that because you see it all the time, and you're like, well, he's technically down, right? I
Right.
mean, but I really don't know the official ruling on that.
Again, very just not super
Yeah.
important.
Well, but
I was calling a high school game of several guys that are going to go to Penn State or could go to Penn State in a couple of years. Abdul Carter, one of them, and there was a play where there was pass interference in the end zone. It was 2nd down and 8 from the 9-yard line or something. So you could get a first down without getting a touchdown. And I actually learned that in high school football, that's not an automatic first down. It is at every other level of football, but it remains
what
2nd down, half the distance to the goal.
for what was the penalty?
Pass interference in the end zone. Just like in college, it's not a spot foul. You don't spot it at the 1-yard line. Half
Sure.
the distance. But the difference is in high school, it's not an automatic first down the way you'd see it at the college or pro level. So,
How
just
about that?
several little rules, quirks
Mm-hmm.
that we experienced this weekend, one of which, we were talking about with that fake field goal. Again, didn't matter. It was a brutal play call. And, I don't know what I would have done there. I probably would have gone for it, right? I do think you get down.
You know what? I think
there.
so.
I think you run your best play to score from the 2-yard line in a
And
condensed field.
And I think you go for it because you don't get it. Okay, Michigan gets the ball at their own 2-yard line.
Right,
You know what I
but
mean?
instead,
Right.
he fumbles it, and
you get nothing out of it, and they get it at the 30. So
yep.
yeah, it was disastrous. So that I certainly had a problem with. I don't know. The offense just look. Michigan's got a good defense, but it just felt like some of the other games this year, they were just lacking a spark. And if they don't get it from Jahan Dotson, who are they going to get it from? I mean, Parker Washington had a nice play where he took a shorter pass and went like 40 yards. But I mean, they struggled. They struggled to find the end zone. They only scored once, right?
Touchdown. Yeah. Right.
Right. And it was on what, a 4th down and goal. I think it was 4th down and 3rd or 4th, and they threw it to Tyler.
Or is that right, or did they get 2 touchdowns? Final score was 21-17.
Well, no, because they went for two. So they had the two
Yeah.
field goals, went
Yeah.
for two to make it 14, and then after the Ebiketie strip sack fumble,
Yep.
they were only able
You're
to get
right.
another field goal. So again, I think the red zone offense has been terrible all year. And I think, obviously that was on full display in the Illinois overtime. But I
Which
mean,
is ironic because the defense in the red zone has been one of the best in the country.
yeah, they have been. And I guess looking back at it, I know Jordan Stout also missed the field goal from like 40 yards or so. So between that and their decision to go for two, or not go for two, to do the fake field goal, I mean, that's, 6 points right there. I mean, that changes some things. But he also
Yeah, like
did
the
make
final score.
right, and he also, but they also
Potentially the
did
result of the game.
exactly. And I'm not putting it on Jordan Stout for missing the kick and all that, but they weren't. The running game looked better with Kevon Lee. I mean, my gosh, I haven't even talked about it yet. Michigan's defensive ends had a field day against Sean Clifford. I think they got to him 7 or 8 times. Clifford was banged up big time.
James Franklin said as much today in his press
and
conference.
those defensive ends, Ojabo and Hutchinson, are very good. I mean, probably might be the best tandem in all of college football. Those two defensive ends, if not, they're right up there. But Penn State's offensive line continues to struggle, and I feel like every year at the beginning of our show before the season starts, where is this year the offensive line can finally, improve and be a strength and not a weakness. And for the 8th year under James Franklin, it's still a weakness. And, they got bailed out with a couple of good, with Saquon Barkley made the line look better than they were when he was here. And McSorley too was scrambling, and even Clifford at times. But, now it's really becoming evident this year, especially with like the running backs struggling a lot. I mean, he was on his back a lot on Saturday, Sean Clifford.
One thing that I do feel a little bit more confident in is this Michigan team is not a realistic college football playoff contender. Now, I'll walk that back immediately after saying it. They're to a point in the season where they just need one result against Ohio State to get there. However,
and they're going to beat them
result,
one of these days, aren't they?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. The point is they're one result away, and that one result is extremely unlikely.
It's at home this year for Michigan.
Great. And it also makes me think about Penn State. Again, the difference between 7-5 and 8-4 is merely aesthetic at this point. Maybe gets you to a slightly higher tier bowl game, but New Year's Six is off the table at this point.
Oh God.
I think that they have a very good chance to beat Michigan State, though, Tyler, in 2 weeks.
Well, I actually think, and you know what, a lot of it depends on where they are mentally. But I think they match up pretty well against Michigan State. I mean, when we get to Michigan State, I know Michigan State likes to run the ball a lot with Kenneth Walker. But I think that's a strength of Penn State is stopping the run. And
unless they're playing Illinois, that's it.
Yeah, and I think they have I really still do think they have a chance to go 8-4. And listen, after a 5-0 start, right now they're 1-4 after going 5-0. It's been a tale of 2 seasons. It's frustrating, but if they can somehow win these next 2 and then go to a decent bowl and win that, and now you're looking at 9-4, it's not as great as you once probably drew it up, but it's also not as bad as it could have been either.
Mm-hmm. I agree. When you take an approach like we do as podcast hosts here, and you take the approach of super fans within the Penn State community, lifers, if you will, this is about building a program. And totally acknowledged, Tyler, this was a year where Penn State had an opportunity to potentially go to the college football playoff. How would that have been accomplished this year? Well, you should have won that game against Michigan. I think if they're 8-1, they might have won that game against Michigan. You beat Iowa, you would have beaten Illinois again, and more of these games happen. You're not going to win all those games, but if you're sitting 11-1 with a tough loss to Ohio State on the road, and you just hope on the last day of the selection committee, maybe. But again, at the end of the day, this team isn't built for the college football playoff yet. It would take good circumstances, a win over Ohio State. It would have taken a lot for that to happen. However, I think that at the end of this year, you take the individual peaks and troughs of this year and take that out, and you look at kind of where this program was versus is. I do believe that if you expand the chart, it's been a gradual growth. And I know the wins and losses may not tell you that, but I'm talking about recruiting. I'm talking about the quality of the coordinators that are at Penn State now versus 4 years ago. I'm talking about, the engagement of the fans. The one thing I'm not quite sure is the loyalty of James Franklin, because I think everything else is actually going the right direction. Facilities improvements. Penn State standing within the Big Ten East, right? Michigan, by no account, is in a better place than Penn State at this point. Michigan State has fallen off big time. Penn State is in a better spot now than it was 4 years ago. Just bones, structural, foundational. I get it, right? Like Trace.
So you're
McSorley
saying not based off of the results from this
just
season.
The wins and losses. Yeah, not even just the wins and losses. Because again, they're not going to win as many as they did when McSorley and Barkley were there. And no, they don't have a Saquon Barkley or a Trace McSorley, but they might. They might have Nick Singleton. They might have Drew Aller guys. They might have Bo Prabula. A couple of those guys could be the difference. And I think that as long as the train can stay moving here, and this is going to be a bit of a controversial opinion, but if they can just maintain James Franklin as the head coach and somehow maintain the enthusiasm, because he seems a bit exasperated with the whole situation, I think if you take the forest from the trees, things are actually really good right now. Not to win a college football playoff game in 2021, 2022, but to be in a better spot than they were in 2016 in terms of program directionally. Yeah, well, I think so.
I hope you're right. I'm really these close losses over the years. I mean, I can't think, and I don't follow any other team as closely as I do Penn State, but the close nail biting losses, the double-digit leads blown, the leads within the last couple minutes of a game. I mean, they're really starting to take a toll on me. I mean, I just added up in my head real quick. Iowa, Illinois, and Michigan, 3 losses by a combined 9 points.
Mm-hmm.
You throw Ohio State in there, that was a 9-point loss. So you have 4 losses by a total of 18. Now,
and so you're saying that's good or bad?
Well, I'm saying,
like, if you're going to have 4 losses.
So I'm saying it's both. And why I'm saying it's both is I'll give you why it's good is obviously a lot of teams have more, like 18 points and 4 losses is good, but at the same time it doesn't matter because they're 4 losses. I believe
it doesn't matter for what? It doesn't matter for making
nobody really, right, for this year it doesn't matter.
But doesn't that tell you that? And then you have a more talented crop of recruits coming in next year than you ever had.
Yes, but at the same time,
tell you that?
But we have seen under James Franklin these types of snowball effects. You lose one close game, and then you come out and lose the next game that you probably shouldn't lose.
That is concerning.
That's my thing. Is like, and on Saturday, red zone offense to me was the reason they lost the game. Red zone offense. That's it. Ebiketie gets a big strip sack. 4 minutes left, whatever it is, after we tied it up. And all you can get is a field goal. He set you up at like the 25-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
And then Michigan is down by 3, and they go down like it's nothing in like 2 minutes and score a 50-yard touchdown. And I guess with they had no business losing to Illinois, and I get it, to Sean Clifford, but that was a terrible hangover from Iowa, because really those two games would have been wins with it. Exactly. But it's concerning because the trends of losing.
Well, why? Well, so what? Okay, but why was Iowa concerning? Right, it was concerning because you didn't have a capable backup. Right?
Oh, absolutely, and
Penn State's making strides to avoid that situation in the future, right? With Bo Perbula, Drew Allar.
Sure, and they they looked at the transfer portal. There was nothing that they thought was no player was adequate to come in and that's
the one guy the one guy I talked about was Hendon Hooker, who ended up at Tennessee. He's having a nice year, but only one team gets Hendon Hooker, and he's probably not coming to Penn State if he has to compete against Sean Clifford.
Exactly. But over the years, I mean, it's been kind of the common. I mean, they keep showing ESPN James Franklin's 2-13 against AP top 10 teams, which technically they beat Wisconsin this year, and I think Wisconsin was 10 when Penn State beat them. They don't really, for whatever reason, don't count it. I guess it doesn't go with their argument, but it's becoming like an every year thing that, all right, they can't beat ranked top 10 teams, which they can and they have, but not as much as we would like them to. But with that being said, most of the time, the only top 10 team you're really playing is going to be Ohio State, who James Franklin is now 1-7 against, but not many people have much success in the Big Ten against them. And
if you ask Ohio State fans, who do they least like to play? It's Penn State.
Oh, well, but that's the other part of it. If you remember, 2016, Penn State won. Everybody remembers that.
Yeah.
2017, and now we're going back a little bit, but Penn State, 2 double-digit leads, 2 18-point leads multiple times, game blown. That was
Ryan Buchholz out of the game. They didn't have any depth on the defensive line. They didn't have all their scholarships that year. But
the next game you lose Michigan State, done. That's it. But the next year you have Ohio State at home. You have a 12-point lead with 8 minutes left at home. You blow that. So
you're running on 4th and 5.
They've had these games, and for whatever reason, they either can't close them out or they just choke it away. And it's concerning, especially losing a game like Illinois. That is still the most concerning thing to me because of how bad of a football team they are.
I hear it's a bad loss.
I don't think that Penn State is as in good of a spot as I think you portrayed them to be. And I hope you're right. I really do.
Let's go through the arguments one by one as to why they're not in a good spot, right? So you talked about red zone offense being really bad. Okay. First year offensive coordinator. Do you think he's the guy or don't you?
I think he is. I think that there's probably some personnel issues. I don't know if these running backs are the type of fit. I mean, let's face it. It's John Lovett is our home run threat. He is not really impressed at all. I was expecting a little bit more. Devin Ford really doesn't get on the field. Then you have Kevon Lee and a banged up Noah Cain, and they're more power backs that haven't been running with power. I don't know if it's a personnel thing. Could be. I think Singleton fits what Yurcich is looking to do offensively. I think he's a good fit. I really do. I think he's probably the answer at running back.
Okay. So that's one objection, you know.
Well, I'm not sure about the big thing to me still is the offensive line. Receivers, you can plug and play. I mean, I'm not saying.
And they've done an excellent job recruiting wide receivers.
Yeah. And I'm like, yes, Jahan Dotson's not going to be here next year. Parker Washington will be. Keandre Lambert-Smith will be. You have a Caden Saunders coming in as a freshman. You have a couple other guys. You'll probably look to the portal. You're not going to have that one
Wallace and
Mega,
Clifford are
right?
going to be redshirt freshmen next year.
Malik
Yeah.
Mega, but you're not going to have Jahan Dotson. But historically speaking, with Mike Yursic's offenses, they have a bunch of different receivers with 500 yards there, 700 there, 400 there. So I'm not really concerned about that. It's still the run game and the pass protection that I think is really killing this offense. I don't know if it's an offensive line thing. I don't know if it's a personnel thing on the offensive line. I don't know if it's development. I don't know what it is, but they have to get that
I'll give
fixed.
you that. I will give you that because when you look to the future, right? God, I can't even remember his name now. That's bad. But Landon Tengwall comes in. Nate Bruce. Yep. So like you have already a light room, but you liked the two guys that you had. Landon Tengwall, I think, could be a factor next year. Probably should be given his pedigree.
I hope so.
Size and frame. But Nate Bruce quits on you 3 weeks and 3 days. I don't know how long, whatever, a week and a half into practice. And so that's the question: is where's the pipeline there? And I agree.
Well, not to cut you off, but they have actually recruited interior linemen a lot better, more successfully than the tackles. You have right now Rasheed Walker. He's leaving for the pros, I think, regardless. I mean, I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion, but he came back this year hoping to get jump into the first round. I mean, he's still a mid-round guy at best, I think, right now. He's not played well. He has not played well against good competition. And then on the right tackle spot, you have Caden Wallace, who is a very intriguing lineman. I think he's very good, but he's also a natural. They rated him coming out of high school as a guard, and they still think that's where he's best suited. But because they haven't recruited tackle well enough, they had to put him out at right tackle. And I think, if you could maybe slide him in the right guard next year and have Tengwall, another guy who probably is better suited for guard but can play tackle. I think if you can bump him the right tackle for next year, I think that would be already a better right side of the line, if you will, because you're moving Caden Wallace into more of a natural position.
Yeah. What is interesting is to see some of the guys that are still playing in the pros on lines that were very suspect at best, right? Like I saw Connor McGovern this weekend, and Ryan Bates gets time, and they were both fine players, but they were never on a dominant offensive line.
Well, I mean, when's the last time Penn State had a dominant offensive line?
That's 2008.
I mean, and it's I don't understand. I mean, I understand why, but it's frustrating because
that's 3 coaching staffs, by the way. That's not it's not just Franklin.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, hopefully, here we are. Hopefully next year they get better. I don't necessarily see it, but
I'll give you that. I don't have a good rebuttal to that objection.
I just think that that's really holding them back. I really do like Yurcich. I'm trying to figure out, like, I think in his mind he knows what he has and what he can do, and I think that's why we're seeing some of the red zone stalls, and that type of stuff. But I still think very highly of him, and would love to have him around here for a while, with or without James Franklin.
Yeah. Any other objections to talk through?
Yeah, I mean, late in the game, going to Cam Sullivan-Brown twice on the last possession was a head scratcher. I mean, he's a nice receiver, but he's also like your 4th or 5th option. Jahan Dotson
and hasn't been involved in those types of situations.
Right. Jahan Dotson did get hurt on that second to last play. Couldn't come in. Even if a timeout was called, he still had to sit out that play. You have so many other options, and that play that they threw to him on the 4th down reminded me of like the 4th and 5 run against Ohio State, like a fade to Cam Sullivan-Brown essentially on a 4th and 3, whatever it was. I don't know, but I don't know. Why not try to get it to shorthanded Parker Washington or one of your tight end. It didn't make sense. But overall, I'm okay with Jurisic. I like him, but I was expecting a little bit better results offensively this year. But I think a lot of it is personnel.
Yeah. First year guy. Let him get
Yep.
some of his guys in here.
Yeah.
If that
Well,
happens, right?
that's the thing. It's like coordinators jump a lot. And by the time he gets his guys in, he's getting his quarterbacks in next year. So
right.
might be off and running for there. I mean, we'll see what happens with Clifford, as we talk about a lot. But I'm interested. I agree. I'm interested to see really with Singleton, because I think he fits what they're looking to do. And I think he's a early enrollee. I'd have to double check that. But I really think that he could come in and be the starter by midway through his freshman year.
Wow. True freshman.
Yeah, I think so, because
Yeah.
I think we've seen, I don't know. And that's my other point is this running back room. Jaywan Sider is an unbelievable recruiter.
Yeah.
Mostly in Florida, down south, mostly running backs, but he's been recruiting them well, but they haven't been developing that well. And recruiting's great and all, but if these guys aren't performing on the field, it doesn't really matter. If they're not living up to their rating. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with bringing in Singleton, and if he can push some of these older guys. I know there's going to be some movement in that room, and I think that's good because I think it's getting a little stale.
Yeah, I just think expand the chart, right? Expand the duration of the chart you're looking at a little bit, and that's tough to do. We're looking at peaks and troughs this year, maybe even a little bit peak and trough downish if you look at over the last 3 years. But in terms of where things are relative to where they have been, and I think where they're going, if you were to project that chart going forward, I like it. I think Penn State does have the right coach in James Franklin. We've talked about that plenty of times here.
And you think you don't think he's going anywhere?
I don't. The fact that every time he's asked the question, he talks about, look at my track record over the last 8 years. I think I've showed my loyalty. I don't know. Is that, if he were to leave after saying that, part of me wonders if that wouldn't be worse than saying, hey, I plan to be the head coach at Penn State. Right. And he's saying, look, I'm loyal. Don't go by my words, go by my actions. And then you leave. I don't know. Maybe I'm pulling at straws there. I think he stays. I think he has the right offensive coordinator, right defensive coordinator in there, right running backs coach. I think the right offensive line coach. I don't know, though.
Time's ticking, I think, already for Trotline.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, I will say this. Jimbo Fisher made an interesting comment today.
I saw it. Yeah.
About LSU.
Tell the listeners.
Yeah, essentially, to paraphrase Jimbo Fisher, when asked about the LSU opening, said, I have possibly the top 5 class. Why would I be recruiting all these kids to A&M just to have them play against me, for me to play against them at a different school? Wouldn't make any sense. And, I immediately thought of James Franklin, because James Franklin, not that he would be leaving for another Big Ten school, but the fact that, I have, top 5 class right now. Why would I want to leave that? I'm recruiting these kids and I'm going to go somewhere and start all over type of thing. So that's where my head went to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Listen, I think what's happening is he's trying to negotiate another salary bump, and again, more so for the assistants. He's trying to generate support from an outgoing AD and school president to continue the advancements of the facilities.
He's going to have
about
a little
365 days a year it takes to compete at this level. That's what he's talking about when he says that.
He's going to have a little bit of trouble, I believe, with any sort of negotiations. I think Penn State will still, they're going to offer him a nice package, but he hasn't been backing it up on the field as of late. So, I mean, the big picture, Yeah, the 2016, 17, 18 seasons were good, but the last 19 games, Penn State's 10-9. If he's looking for a bump to make him a top 5 coach in college football, I guess it's possible. But at the same time, it's kind of like, man, you just lost to Illinois. We're 1-4 after starting 5-0. It's kind of it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
I hear you on all that. I do. I still think you'd rather be Penn State than most other programs in the country right now. I think the base is there. The old adage, this is more for when coaches are being sought after by other programs, but hire the resume, don't hire the last, 6 games that he's coached. And I've probably butchered that saying, but that's what it is you hire the resume and hire is this the right guy? Not, did he lose to Michigan last week with a bad fake field goal call? And yes, I do think that James Franklin is the guy
a lot of the losses are similar that he's had in his career at Penn State.
I hear you.
And that's resume.
Okay. I think they do a lot of really good things. I think they play a ton of top 10 matchups because they're in the toughest division in football. You could call the SEC West that year in, year out. And he acquits himself. I mean, listen, Ohio State fans are telling, and Ohio State coaches will tell you, we don't like playing Penn State. It's the toughest game we play every year.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing I will say, and I'm gonna not bring up last year because of the whole COVID. It was just such a weird year. The one thing I will absolutely give James Franklin credit for is his teams do not get blown out. They don't have blowout losses. For the most part, I'm sure it's happened here and there, but he generally has them ready to play. The problem is a lot of times they play up to the opponent. A lot of times they play down to their opponent, is what I've noticed.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's a double-edged sword.
I think if you did spend enough time around college football, you would find these frustrations with most every fan base.
Oh, yeah.
At a similar level to Penn State.
Oklahoma's frustrated right now with Lincoln Riley.
Oklahoma's frustrated. LSU fired their coach 2 years after winning
Florida
championship.
Is extremely frustrated.
Florida's frustrated. I mean, they've been in SEC
Texas.
Championship games. Texas, yeah, I mean, they're kind of in a unique situation, right? But, Oregon, horns down, yeah. Oregon's playing great now, but they've been really upset with Cristobal in the past. I think, similar to expanding the duration of the chart, I think you pull yourself up to 30,000 feet and look at the rest of college football. Right. Nobody's perfect. They're 18 to 22-year-old kids, and stuff happens.
And I will say this. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the question is the program moving in the right direction? And is this a guy that you think can take your program to the consistency and the levels it needs to go? I think the consistency is there. Level they need to go, I'm not sure. But who else? Who would? It's not easy. It's Clemson, and now they're off the map for now. Ohio State, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, I guess LSU. That's
Notre Dame
programs. Notre Dame, and you know what? Every one of those programs, you could argue, have as good of or better football tradition than Penn State, and Penn State's been right on the outside looking in. The last 2 years, no. But to say they won't be back to that level and be competing for kind of second place in the Big Ten East, or maybe you get a win over Ohio State, they'll be right back in that position next year.
I hope so. I mean, when you talk about next year, the schedule's pretty tough in the early part, especially if they're breaking in a new quarterback and all that. But I will say this: you mentioned Georgia. It wasn't long ago that some loyal Bulldogs were calling for Kirby Smart, and I hope this is just a bump in the road, if you will. But I've seen this. I can't believe it's already his 8th season, James Franklin at Penn State. I mean, feels like just yesterday we heard the Pennsylvania boy with a whatever he said, Penn State heart, whatever it was. But it's been 8 years, and some things, 2016 was awesome, and then, lately hasn't been so great. So it's almost like I'm just looking for the real James Franklin to, please stand up, as Eminem said.
Yeah, maybe it's a good place to leave the discussion. I think it's good to have I don't even know if it's a disagreement, but
and here we go. I think it'll be a much different discussion come next week if, God forbid, they lose to Rutgers, which I don't see happening. I do not see happening, but Rutgers plays Penn State pretty tough. Greg Schiano is a very good coach. They play him tough. Like I said when we talked earlier, we could see this team going 8-4. But at the same time, where are they mentally with not much to play for other than pride, at this point?
Yep. I get it. Well, I think it was a good discussion, Tyler. Anything else you want to talk about tonight before we shut her down?
I'll give you my prediction for the game. I think it's an 18-point spread last I checked, and I'm gonna go Penn State 27-13. I don't think they cover. They win by 14. I think it's gonna be kind of sloppy. It's gonna be a quiet atmosphere. The students will be home most of them will be home for Thanksgiving break because it starts on Friday afternoon. A lot of them will head home. It is senior day. Rutgers just smoked Indiana too, who was terrible this year. But I'll say they'll win by 14, and it's not going to be that exciting or interesting of a game.
I like sloppy as well. I think Rutgers covers 23-16. I'll call it.
Oh, geez. Well, I think Rutgers is going to hang with them, and I hope we're not at a discussion where we're saying we lost to Illinois and Rutgers in the same season at home.
I'll be more interested in your viewpoint that you presented tonight if it's a loss. That's a promise.
That would be an interesting show indeed.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully we don't have to do it.
No, hopefully not.
But good show, Tyler. Appreciate you being here. Thanks to all the listeners and viewers for being with us here. We'll keep it going through the end of the regular season. He's Tyler Gehlhaus, and I'm Bob Long. This has been the Nittany Lion Sports Report on Bob Long Sports, and as always, housed on the Sports Stream Premium Network. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Dunphy Ford is Mayfair's neighborhood Ford store.
Nobody knows your neighborhood like Dunphy Ford.
Nearly 40 years.
Right here on Frankfort Avenue.
Generation after generation. Our neighbors continue to be our customers. We have access to the cars and trucks you want with financing you need.
Dunphy Ford is Northeast Philly's first choice for America's #1 brand. 7700 Frankfort Avenue in Mayfair. Online at www.dunphyford.com.
Come experience the Dunphy difference. You'll be glad you did.